I've already been told to open by saying we should hold our applause till the end. So I've already messed up my role as moderator, but I'm sure there are going to be many applause-worthy moments because I couldn't be more honored to have been asked to moderate this panel today of our absolutely fantastic Sitecore MVPs. And I'm going to do one round of applause, just one. I hope all or many of you were able to attend the previous session that we just had with Jody Kovich over in the Dolphin. Who was able to attend that session? Fantastic. So many of you, not all of you, but this is really meant to be a continuation of that conversation as well as its own spotlight on this fantastic group of women. And from Sitecore's perspective, the topic of empowering women in technology is just something that I'm hugely passionate about. And it's going to be one of my top goals. I've been at Sitecore for about 3 months now to really put a continued focus and spotlight on advancing the conversation of how do we get more women, and specifically women in technical roles in technology. And I believe that Sitecore should be a great example and a showcase for women in that field. And so even though I am not in a technical field myself, I still believe that I could make an impact by getting involved with the community and helping further their agenda. So I'm really happy to do that and just want to offer myself up as a resource to this group to do that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a panel discussion, and we've got, as you can see, a very robust group of women on the panel. And so we've got a series of questions that we're going to put out to the panelists, and we're going to have them, 3 people will answer each question, and we'll advance in that way, and then we'll take questions at the end. And as I mentioned, if we can hold our applause, because we've got a lot of questions that we want to get through and a lot of insights that we want to hear from this panel, and we just want to make sure we get through it in the time that we have allotted, because we do have a set amount of time. So thank you all for being here, and I'm gonna kick us off now, hopefully. There we go. Okay, so our first question is, how did the women in the Sitecore panel come to be, and why is this type of community important?
I think I'll take that one. Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Grzalski. Last year at Symposium, I think there was sort of a noticeable gap in terms of female speakers and keynotes specifically. So that sort of started a fire. And then when submissions came out, or the call for papers this year, Isabel sort of took the lead and requested to put together a female panel, and that really brought us together. At that time, we were also having a lot of conversations just about women in Sitecore and that community. So those efforts have really come together really nicely, and you're going to start to see more and more females here and MVPs, and it's been great. I've been an MVP now for 3 years. At my first MVP summit, I was one of about 6 or 7 women, and so now, I mean, even just looking at this panel, it's grown significantly, and it's a really great community, and it just really adds an extra layer of learning and connection to what Sitecore really provides. So, yeah.
So I joined the ranks of the technical MVPs this year. And as Jill mentioned, the number has grown slowly, but we still have less than 5% of the commerce and technical MVPs are women, so we have a ways to go. So my personal foray into the tech industry was rather accidental and very unconventional, and I never thought about the fact that I was going into a really male-dominated industry. I was also fortunate to have a few really strong female mentors, which I didn't realize was so unusual till much later. So I went back a few years later, got my master's in computer science, and the gender gap became really real. And one of my favorite first day of semester activities was looking around the class demographics and seeing the number of women, among other things, and it was always tiny, and it got smaller and smaller as the classes got more technical. So, and then as far as the MVP, I personally thought about and talked about, as a lot of you know, applying for an MVP before I actually did. And I know I'm not alone in that hesitation. I think female role models and mentors are super important, and we're really optimistic that this community is going to help encourage and inspire more women to become active in the Sitecore community.
I also represent the newer MVP, so to say, like Wendy. I got the MVP in February this year. And back then, this community was not established. So what has it changed for me? I think for me, it's given me a sense of belonging, and I feel inspired. And I can come with some concerns that I know that these ladies can relate to. For me personally, this is about family life and balancing that with a career in tech. Right now I'm on maternity leave, and I actually have my little baby girl and my husband in the back. So in order for me to be here today, they had to come, and I'm so glad to be able to do this. And I feel like this community is very supportive and giving me the strength and making me brave to do this, to have them here, because it's my dream to attend this and to be an MVP, but it's also my dream to be a present mom. So I think this community is very important in order to inspire women in tech, to have more women in tech, and to recognize those who already are. And yeah, I would imagine, like Wendy, that a lot of females are not applying for the MVP, and I think they should. I bet they are really skilled enough to do it. Study shows that men tend to be very brave, whereas women are more perfectionists. So a study shows that if we have a job application and a man, he meets 60% of the qualifications, he will apply for the job, where women tend to apply if they meet 100% of the qualifications. 100%. And I think this community is important in order to inspire women to be more brave.
Thank you so much. I think we all wanted to clap after all three of those answers. But and I just have to say, I couldn't agree more. You've got to be brave, and I really want to get involved and help encourage more women to become MVP. So I'd love to hear from everyone in the community as kind of a follow-up to this, to understand how can I help facilitate that. Okay, moving on to the second question. Why do organizations benefit from enabling more women to be in roles of technology and leadership?
I'm Margaret Wise. I'm VP of Strategy with ARC, and I'll take the first pass at answering this. I think there are so many different ways to answer this, first off, because it's really endless benefit to organizations to have more women involved at all levels of the organization. One thing I would say to start with is it's a better reflection of the organizations that you're serving when you have that mix. In technology, we get very used to seeing few women, and I'm so glad that we're having so many voices here about changing that. But that's not the case in all industries. I had one specific example when I went to go out and meet with a medical organization, very large organization, and they'd had a couple of different groups come out and meet with them. And I was the first woman that had come out to meet with them and a team, and had a couple of men with me. But and they said, our organization is 90% women. So we're thrilled to see a woman in the room here. So first and foremost, diversity is a better reflection of the organizations that you're serving. So secondly, more inwardly focused, it gives you a more holistic approach to how you're thinking about your organization, how you're solving problems, and having that diversity of thought and perspective. And we're focused on women today, but it's not really limited to women, really, when I say that diversity of thought. It's across genders, it's across ages, it's across lifestyles. You get the benefit of all of those different points of input. In Paige, something you said in the earlier luncheon really resonated with me, that early in my leadership career, moving into leadership positions, I've really only ever had men around me. I've only had men leaders. And so the first thing that I defaulted to was, I need to be more like a man. And don't get me wrong, I continue to learn very good things from the men around me. In particular, I've learned to be very direct. I've learned to communicate very succinctly. I've learned to ask for what I want, and I have shared those into the mentee relationships that I have to help coach more women to do that, just because that's just a better way to operate in business. But as I matured a little bit in those leadership positions, I also embraced more of my own authentic qualities, which I think one of the biggest ones that women tend to bring to the table is empathy. And it helps us relate better to the people that are on our teams. It helps us relate better to our customers. It helps us relate better to our partners. It helps us think more about what are all the dynamics going on in the relationships that we're navigating, both business and personal. And bringing that to the conference table and to the boardroom, I think brings another dimension of thinking and solving problems that really benefits leadership teams.
So I, like Jill, have been an MVP for quite a few years now, and I just wanted to add as well, it's wonderful to see how this community has grown and this growing group of women here, and I think it will only get stronger, and I encourage everyone else, if you want to go for your MVP, go for it. It's awesome. In my role, I spend a lot of time selling and pitching. And the first point I want to make is, people we're human. We like to work with people that we like and to whom we can relate. That's why when we sell, we often try to find these hooks of commonalities. So we talk about our families, travel, hobbies. It gets a conversation going, and we can find a point of commonality to talk about. Organizations, when they reflect the diversity of the ecosystem they're in, there's a lot of power in reflecting diversity. So I've many times been the only woman in a pitch team, and a woman on the other side, so in the stakeholder group or in the client team, has actually come over and expressed appreciation that there's another woman there and she can really relate to that. So it's powerful and it makes a big difference. And the second thing I want to talk about is modeling diverse career paths. So organizations invest a lot in people. People are everything, human resources, right? And I think it's, in this day and age, we have so many options available to us. All of us who work in this field, whether you're coming up through tech or marketing or sales, there's so many different directions to go in, which is really exciting. But at the same time, we want to see a path in front of us. And for women, it's particularly charged because we're gonna have babies, or maybe we're not. And you have to make that decision at a certain point of time and do it at a certain point of time. And then also deciding, are you gonna stay a subject matter expert? Are you gonna be a developer because you love it so much? Are you climbing the ladder? Are you gonna do something else? And I think the more that we can see diversity in front of us of options, and hey, I can see myself doing that in 10 years or 20 years. It's really, again, powerful, and it means that your organization can model those paths and hopefully show a future to everybody, not just women.
Awesome. And I want to reinforce also that having more women in tech and leadership roles doesn't only bring gender diversity, but it opens up to a broader level of inclusion, such as generational, different beliefs as well, and cultural, as you can see on this panel. So all of this brings new perspectives and new ideas to critical business problems. And in today's world, our customers, partners, even our co-workers come from different backgrounds. And to better work with them, better serve them, we need to reflect all of this diversity. And covering a little bit on the leadership side, I found very interesting a KPMG report that shows that 86% who saw women in leadership positions, that's wonderful. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, so 86% of women who saw other women in leadership positions, they felt empowered, that they can get them there themselves. And this is awesome because we can get inspired by women that have been through a path that is not easy. They have worked hard to get there. And just sharing the experiences, I've learned from close colleagues in past jobs many years ago that some also got to lose their jobs, their teams, because they step out some months to care for the kids. So if we don't share those stories, we don't never know. And we need women, but also men. And all of these bring great benefit with all the diversity to solve all these problems and bring awesome innovation.
Thank you. Our next question, what are the barriers that women in tech feel that we as a community can help them overcome?
So I'll go first. Is that working? Okay. Over time, in my career, there's been times where I've been the only woman in a room of about 30 developers and tech leaders. And at times, earlier in my career, this created internal barriers of self-doubt in my head. It's that imposter syndrome where a capable person is plagued with the fear of becoming discovered as a fraud, that you don't have enough tech chops or you don't belong. And over time, I've realized that it doesn't matter, and it's more important to push through the nonsense and my introverted tendencies and focus on myself, gain that knowledge and experience to demonstrate my value. One of my favorite inspirational ideas is by Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford University. She coined the term growth mindset, which is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed and can change with your effort. I'm a strong believer of this and feel that both women and men can become successful if they care about what they do, work really damn hard at it, and have grit. And it's okay if you don't know something or get uncomfortable. Work as hard as you can to truly understand the concepts, ask questions, get your hands dirty in the details. If you fail, you learn. And if you succeed, it's so empowering. And in both cases, you become stronger.
So being in a leadership position and coming from a technical background, I do believe that many of the challenges I'm facing are actually my male counterparts are also facing. However, some of these challenges are unique to us in a sense, especially if those stemming from cultural misconceptions and stereotypes about women in tech. So it's one thing to thrive and to prove your competency in such high competitive industry, and another thing to be in a continuous field that being judged, questioned every time you're making a technical decision, or you decide, okay, I'm not going to stay late after a client dinner, or why I'm in such a position, so I need to work hard to prove to everyone around me that I am competent enough to be in that role. Like I shared with the rest of my colleagues in here that technical communities that do prioritize diversity and inclusion also help a lot in overcoming these challenging and barriers. I'm really proud of the Sitecore community, seeing everyone around in here that help us to speak. And if we choose to speak, it helps everyone around us feel a little bit braver and the world a little bit better.
It's fine. I couldn't agree more with what the ladies have said, and all of us here, we're all part of the same family. And all the conferences, the symposium, and even this panel came throughout the Sitecore community. So the Sitecore community has a huge power. And this community has been one of the most supportive communities that I have had the privilege to meet. But the way how we can help each other with this community is by mentoring. We can help by teaching others, but by having others approach to us and making them feel even more comfortable, go for MVPs, go and speak, do more to progress in their careers. But what we have also noticed is that if you're a woman and if you're in an all-male environment, some women do not feel comfortable to actually approach to their male counterparts. Because for them, it's very easy, it's very difficult to associate with them if you're not one of the boys playing games, drinking beer, and all that kind of stuff. So how do you actually approach to someone to be mentor? And also the problem can be is that mentors have a tendency to associate themselves with others. So we're trying to find our counterparts. And this is something that we really can work together to help each other. And if we make changes today, they're for the future.
Thank you for those fantastic answers. I just want to go back to what you said, and I couldn't agree more that it is a tendency that I think women in particular have to feel like we don't deserve, or we're going to be found out for being a fraud. I still feel that way every day. I wake up and think, wow, today's the day they're going to find out, how did I get this job? So I think everyone feels that way all the time, and it's important to acknowledge it, and for women at all positions to share that they feel that way too. I think men feel that way too. I think it's a secret that we shouldn't keep. Our next question, in what ways may my organization be inadvertently creating a gender gap?
Yeah, so when we say inadvertent gender gap, a lot of organizations probably say, well, we understand that women are important. We have them in leadership roles. We see the benefit. There's no gender gap here at our organization. And you know, that's not inherently true. As human beings, we need to categorize things. We need to jump to conclusions, make assumptions, because that's how, as humans, we process the world. It's the way that we can process it quickly. So those do exist because that's our human nature. And so we have to understand that that's there and first admit that there is a bias. By raising awareness of this bias, it will make people understand that it's there and understanding that it's unacceptable. So we're going to talk about a few of the examples of what this inadvertent bias may be. The first one is women are expected to do the office housekeeping tasks. It often becomes a woman's responsibility to do these tasks. Order lunch, schedule meetings, take notes in those meetings. This takes a lot of time. I don't know if anyone has tried to have 10 people who are very busy get into one meeting. You could spend an hour or two just trying to figure out the right time for that. So, women have been raised to be compliant, people-pleasing, self-sacrificing, nurturing, communal, and men have sort of been raised to expect that. A man who doesn't help is busy. A woman might be considered selfish. So, these men, they're ambitious, results-oriented, and after giving identical help, maybe volunteering, a man was significantly more likely to be recognized for a promotion, important projects, even raises. So why is this a problem? The woman might actually be better suited to do some of those things. A woman could be more organized. She could be more focused. So, okay, she's the best person in the room to do it. Maybe she should do it. But here's the problem. She actually probably shouldn't be doing it because while she's doing that, she's not getting trained. She is not giving her ideas. She's not brainstorming. She's not advancing her own career. This is not helping her, and it's actually not helping your organization because you're missing out on something valuable she could be adding. So how do you overcome this? First, rotate who's responsible for those responsibilities. Assign out those communal tasks. Don't penalize a woman if she didn't volunteer for something. And as a manager or an executive, be cognizant of who you're asking to do those things. And also pay attention to who's volunteering and reward that. It's not a matter of coaching women to stand up for themselves and be more assertive. It's actually more about men taking the initiative to do more, to volunteer more. And, to the women, prioritize your own needs and stop apologizing in your workplace.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. So when I think about the ways that companies are probably inadvertently contributing to the gender gap, one of the things that I think about is unconscious bias. And unconscious bias is so insidious precisely because it is so hard to identify and eliminate. My favorite example of this is the Boston Symphony. So in the 1950s, the Boston Symphony was trying to close their gender gap between their musicians. So they opened up blind auditions, which sounds like a wonderful idea. But after the first round of blind auditions, not much changed. So they went back to the drawing board and they thought about it for a while. And for the second round of blind auditions, they asked everyone to take off their shoes because it was the sound of high heels on wood that was signaling to the auditioners that that was a woman, that was a female musician, and that was making them inadvertently select against her for a position in the symphony. So those are things, you're not doing this on purpose. It's not something that you're aware of, and that means that you have to be on guard against it at all times. It requires being very self-analytical. It requires being very introspective. It means thinking about, how many women are on this team? Why aren't there more women on this team? Is it really true that there's only one woman in your company that's qualified to sit on this team? I bet that that is not true. Spoiler alert. And there are things that you can do on a community level as well. If you see a woman that you've never seen before, come to a user group, engage her professionally. We're not going to hit on people at the user groups. I can't believe that needs to be said, but just let's be clear about that. If you're a manager, talk up the successes of the women on your team. I can't tell you how invaluable that is. And one of the other things that I want to briefly talk about is confidence, because we as women have to start putting ourselves forward, being a little bit more aggressive. As Christina said, as has been pointed out, men tend to apply for or put themselves forward for gigs, for lack of a better word, any kind of a gig, a job, a speaking slot, when they're 60% qualified, and women wait to be 100% qualified. So, every woman in this room, look right at me. I promise that you are qualified. I promise that you are talented. I promise that you are smart. I promise that you have valuable information in your head that nobody else has. And the community will benefit from that information. I am great at pep talks. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm here for you. My DMs are open. Hit me up on Twitter. Come to my LinkedIn. I'm on the Slack community. I will help you. I will edit for you. I will just tell you how awesome you are. Everyone in this room, everyone in the community, and everyone in the world benefits when women add their voices to the chorus.
Jackie's speech is a really hard act to follow, and more often than not because I'm actually crying after she talks, and that's not actually a joke. Yeah, you know, we've kind of touched on things like unconscious bias and also imposter syndrome, and sometimes that conflates into the voices of females not necessarily being heard. And, you know, it's something that I'm also conscious of because I have a tendency to overtalk as well, and I think sometimes the best strategy towards that is just take a step back and listen. If you know that you have a woman in the room that has those ideas, and you generally do because you work with them and we work with each other, you know what they're good at, so let them have that introduction. Ask them a question. Make sure that their voice is being heard, even if they're not necessarily confident enough to have their voice being heard as well. And, you know, taking that step back and listen also means that we're thinking about what we say a little bit more. We're thinking about the tone of what we're saying. We're making sure that we're respectful of other people's feelings and things like that as well. And, you know, we want to make sure that we have a healthy and supportive community, and sometimes that means that you don't have to say everything you want to say, but also that you give people the opportunities to say what they want and need to say as well. You know, we want to make sure that we're getting new people involved in the community. Obviously, there's not enough female representation as is, and the only way that's going to happen is if we have an inviting and welcoming space for women to feel that they can participate in. So, yeah.
Our next question, how can women balance a personal and professional life with the demands from a career in technology?
Hello. Okay, it's working. Hi, I'm Angela from Horizontal Integration, and I have found, you know, people think that your personal life is going to go to your professional life. I feel that my professional life has actually blended into my personal life. As I've gotten bigger and my kids have gotten older and they have more activities, I'm using some of the principles I do at a daily basis. So for anyone familiar with agile development, I run my personal life agile. I've got a Kanban board, I've got the calendar, and I have my support system, just like my team. It's extended out. You know, I can't make volleyball. Can so-and-so's parents bring my daughter? That type of thing. It's leaning on your support system, and then it's prioritization. And I think I work with clients a lot, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to say we're taking on too much stuff. We can't fit it in this sprint. We're stretching ourselves too thin, and it means all of our delivery is not as good. So saying no is okay. You can't do everything. You can't do everything at work. You can't do everything in your personal life, and that's okay. It's okay to say no.
Hello. I want to discuss a different aspect, a different perspective that I have experienced firsthand. I grew up in India, and countries surrounding India, the South Asian continent as we call, I know that there are some challenges for women to get even basic education. And for you, for anyone for that matter, to be successful and to be able to compete in high-tech jobs especially, there are two things that are most important: education and hard work. Education is a challenge for some women, as I mentioned, but there are quite a few who are able to overcome that challenge, and then they get into another set of challenges. We are perceived and wired also to be serving, to be taking care of our family, to be taking care of our children, to be taking care of our in-laws, to be taking care of our house, and then whatever time is left, do whatever you want to do. So I think there are two types of struggles we have. The struggles that come from our social cultural background, the social and cultural and domestic responsibilities and demands from around us, and there are challenges that we fight within. And I have been through both. So what do you do in that situation? All the developers out there, just debug through them. Solve one layer at a time until you get to the final solution. And even if you didn't get to the solution, it's fine. If you didn't quit, you didn't fail. So just keep at it. Having a normal, balanced day is an ideal world, and that never happens. But just keep on trying, achieving that. Having said that, the society around us, I think it's okay to expect something from them as well. I'll give you one example. I grew up in a family where there were lots of demands from me as a woman, as a girl child. I love my parents. But it's just the social cultural background that I was part of. But now I look at my son, who compliments me equally when I cook a really good dish for him. At the same time, when he sees that my mom achieved something at work and he comes and tells me, fist bump, Mom, I'm proud of you. That needs to happen more. And I think maybe a little more senior level than your kid. I think that will empower a woman. That will give them the initial confidence, the initial boost that they get from their families, from the society that they are part of. And I think they will bring that confidence to work, that I have full support. And now I can ask for more support because it's okay, and that will get you places. So first thing first, develop a strength within to debug through situations, and don't feel bad if you have to order in a pizza. Thank you.
Wow, I am really honored to be part of this, beautiful and smart, talented woman. Hello, everyone. I want to start off by sharing one of the life lessons that I truly believe in. I believe that acceptance is the first step for any problem solving out there. So on that note, I want to share a harsh reality with all of you today. None of us are perfect. To be even more brutal, now that we started on that note, we can never be. Because perfection is perception, according to me. It's in thoughts, it's never real. When we all take a moment to digest it, I know some of you thinking, hey, what is she talking about? We are epitome of perfection. Hang in there, trust me. When we all kind of embrace this reality, we're gonna be empowered in making those choices that we never did before, because maybe we were a little afraid that we might fail. And hence, we might be called a little imperfect. So when we all do that, when we actually reach out to those choices, maybe it personal or professional, that we truly want to, that give us happiness and satisfaction, we're gonna reach places in life that we never imagined. And about life, I just want everybody of us to remember that life is this beautiful masterpiece that we created for us and for those around us by making all these choices, maybe it personal or professional. As an individual, we must remember that all we can do is to give your best at every single choice given. So let's all do that. And say you failed pretty bad on one of the choices you made, it's okay, don't fret. Keep moving, because your last failure or your last incorrect choice doesn't make who you are. You're more than that. You're the journey on the whole. So let's all keep rolling. Let's wake up our daredevil within us. Let's reach out for those choices. And while you're at it, don't forget to do your best.
Great advice. Our last question is, how can we inspire and develop the newest generation of women who are looking to grow their careers in technology?
Okay. The three of us remaining represent the more seasoned career gals with over 7 decades of tech experience. We've got a SVP and director, owner of her own consulting company. Very inspirational, right? In this age of women breaking that glass ceiling, there's a few of us on the panel that chose our path to not quite climb the corporate ladder and remain as career developers, myself included. But our journey hasn't been any easier, even staying down at that level. I'm going to reiterate a point a third time that Ethel and Paige made. Imagine feeling like a fraud in your career because you don't subscribe to a culture that is living and breathing and dreaming about tech 24/7. Imagine being held to a higher standard because you don't believe in all of that. You don't embrace that as your interests. I often question if I was in the right career or not, but I've decided to stay because I have a passion for critical thinking and problem solving. And over my career, as I've met other women in tech, I realized that this is the place that I should be. Despite not loving Star Wars or owning my own gaming system. So, what can I say to inspire the next generation? Don't let the techie stereotypes steer you away. And it's okay if you want to remain lower on the career ladder, as long as you feel that's where you can contribute the best. The women on this panel are living proof. Your daughter doesn't have to make the decision of whether it's Kirk or Picard, and she doesn't have to love math either. Your daughter can have a passion for fashion and nature and still find a place in the tech industry. In fact, our industry needs more of that.
So I want to talk to you today about the value of sponsorship and how it can make a difference for young women. I work with senior leaders every day, and the rock stars, they're the ones who sponsor young talent. So sponsorship's a little bit different than mentorship. It's a symbiotic relationship between the sponsor and the protege. So the protege gets access to meetings and projects and people that they wouldn't have access to. And the sponsor gets a reputation for nurturing great talent and for producing creative work and having a really excellent team around her or him. Sponsorship can put talented employees in a great place in their career. They can stay interested and feel positive about where they are and know that they have a chance to move forward and to emulate their leaders. Unfortunately, and probably not surprisingly, men are 45% more likely to have a sponsor sometime during their career than women. We have to change that. We have to jump in and give women the opportunity to show how great they are. So sponsorship is active. You need to look for those young women that have talent and drive, and put them by your side, find opportunities for them, look for chances to promote them in meetings. Somebody said this, I can't remember. Say great things. When they say great ideas, make sure that you echo them. Really put them in the spotlight. If you look around, it's happening with men, right? Men are getting that sponsorship and other people are echoing and saying, yeah, that's a great idea. We need to do that for women too. And both men and women can be sponsors. Women don't have to sponsor women and men don't have to sponsor men. This is not, it's a little different. A mentorship is a little bit more who you are, right? Being close to someone who's just like you. But because sponsorship is symbiotic, it crosses that barrier. You don't have to sponsor someone who's just like you. You have to sponsor someone who's young and talented. And you have to find someone to sponsor you who can help you move your career to where you want it to go. So she's out there, that young woman who's fabulous and creative and talented. Go out of your way, find her, and jump on her bandwagon.
So this one I'm really passionate about. So anybody who was at the luncheon probably heard I have a 9-year-old daughter. Her name is Maddie, and I don't want to have this conversation. I really don't. I'd hate that we're having this conversation. And when Maddie, if I project a decade out, and Maddie's going for her first job or second job or however many, I hope it's because she just worked really hard. I hope it's not because because she's a woman that she gets the job. I hope that the person who works the hardest, regardless if they are a man or if they're a woman, gets the leadership position, gets the door open. And so what can we do as this generation to inspire the next generation of hopefully female leaders? Show them some role models, right? Like look at the group right here. These are women role models. And I think what we haven't seen, and even Jody in her speech talked about, when you think of a man and a role model in your head, you close your eyes and Elon Musk comes up, or there's so many men out there, and there's Sheryl Sandberg, awesome, but there's not enough. So I think it's really all of our jobs in technology as women to show them, because if, as we said in the luncheon, when you see it, if you believe it, you see it, believe it, however it went. But there's things that you can do in your company. So one thing we did in our company, we started a program called Tech Girl. I'm super proud of it. And we bring 10 and 11-year-olds into the office once a quarter, and we teach them things like Scratch and HTML, and they create games, and they have super fun. They get cupcakes, and they get lots of junk, and their parents love that we send them back all fueled up. But it's fun, and what they get to see is they get to see women role models, and they get to play with things, and I hope be exposed to things within technology that maybe they aren't getting in school. And so I would challenge everybody in this audience, is there something you can do in your company like that? Is there something you can do, or, as you said, see that young girl and just expose her to a female role model in technology? That's how we're gonna move the dial.
Thank you all very much for your extremely inspirational answers. I think now's a great time for a round of applause. So we've just got a few minutes left, so I'm going to open it up, and maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions, depending on the length of the responses. How many? Oh, do we have a mic? Yeah. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask the panel? I see one in the back. I see 2 on.
Hi, yes. So my question is, I have a female boss that doesn't necessarily have a work-life balance. And so when you say that it's okay to say no, it's not actually okay to say no. So what do you do in a situation where you have 2 young children and one says, it's okay that you're going out of town because we never see you anyway, and continue to learn and expand your knowledge?
Yeah, that's tough. I'm not gonna say that is not a tough situation. I think for me, it's having the honest conversations, and again, I do that at work and I do that at home, and hoping that you can break through that barrier. It sounds like I'd love to talk to you more about what you're seeing, and it sounds like it's more on professional. I was more talking on a personal level. Like, I have to tell my kids, we're not doing this. I know you want to do Lego League, but we signed up on that night for soccer and volleyball, and we just literally can't. And I think we can talk more about the professional, but for me in a personal, that's where I actually find it's harder to say no sometimes, is when the kids they want to do something else, or we want to do something else, and you just can't fit it in. So does anybody else have any?
The only thing, and we talked about it at the luncheon, is authenticity, right? That's her gig. That's her thing, that she needs to be, 100% on all the time. That doesn't mean you need to do that. So maybe you need to start looking at the environment. Is that the right environment for you to be in? Is that the one that's gonna bring you and your authentic self there to excel and be amazing? So I would kind of, don't take on what others do if that's not what you believe in. And saying no is hard sometimes, but if that's not gonna bring your authentic self, look at the environment. Maybe it's not right.
Question there.
Okay, so I feel like every single one of you have talked about knowing our value as contributors, within the organization, and your skill level, whatever. On the same parallel path, I actually wanted to ask, on a different level, how do you know your monetary value? Because I think that no matter what level you're in, and if everybody can answer that question in a different way, right? It's like if you're on the board, you could probably also be like, am I at the same level as that guy or not? Like Charlize Theron, remember, she was like underpaid and she shouldn't have been with her counterpart. So it's like she was way up, she was like in the millions, right? So it's like, how do you know your monetary value? And I honestly just ask that to all the women up there.
That's a great question. I think monetary value, like, you know, in the IT industry especially, like typically like when you're going for a job interview or when you are approached by these recruiters or whatnot, we typically, like, you know, there are lot of tools out there to kind of check like your years of experience, one thing, right? Like years of experience, what are your skill set? I don't want to talk technology here, but again, like, you know, what are you actually working on? Like platform, so on and so forth. That's the first thing, right? And the second thing is you got to know, like based on your previous experience, like what do I deserve? What do I kind of like, you know, have potential? And also you can compare with like some of your peers or anybody not from your same workplace, but maybe you have friends out there who can actually help you. So don't be afraid to ask somebody who you think might be on the same boat and might help.
Yeah, I think to build off of that, you know, using tools like Glassdoor and being able to look at salary ranges, it's really important to do your homework and to use that as a baseline, and then to, you know, to your point, to really think about what you contribute. Where do you fall in the organization? What projects are you working on? Have you put in extra effort? Are you taking on tasks at the role above you or things like that? And start to play around with some numbers in your head. I think, you know, one of the things that I struggled with in the past was asking for more money. And, you know, I would get a number in my head, I'd bring it down a little bit. And, you know, once you do your homework, find a number and jump it a little bit and ask for it, because look, you know, you never know if anyone's going to say no until you ask the question, and really understand your worth, and continue to baseline it and check and talk to other people in other industries, and, you know, try and figure out and do your homework that way.
Am I allowed to answer the question? I'm dying to jump in here. I interview and hire a lot of men and women, and I can just say that women seldom negotiate. They seldom seem to be confident to ask for a specific salary, and you should do your homework very specifically. There are salary ranges that you can research. I would recommend that you talk to recruiters, because recruiters would love to share with you what the salary ranges are for the jobs that they're filling, because they know very well. And then you go into the company with the data and you ask for it. And I think the knowing your worth, all of these positions have salary ranges. The companies, for the most part, should be willing to share those salary ranges with you. And you should understand what that salary range is before you get to a point where you're negotiating for the salary. And then figure out where you want to ask in that salary band, and have your data points to back up why you think you are where you are on the salary band.
I'd like to share a personal story on this, because I think it's one of the biggest missteps that I've made in my career, is when I had very young children and I wanted to work 80% time. And what I really wanted was flexibility. And I didn't know how to ask for that. I didn't know how to look for that the right way. And so I went 80% time for 80% pay. And I walked into that room saying, I'm actually willing to work 40 hours a week. I'm willing to take a pay cut to be able to tell you, no, I can't do that meeting on Tuesday morning because I'm going to mom's group. And I worked harder than most of the men that I worked with that were working full time. But I'd made that misstep. And it took me years to financially recover from doing that. So I would encourage you, like I've had this conversation with so many of my working mom friends, that the way we work and our agile approach to managing our life, the level of productivity that we have, that, you know, you force yourself into organization, you force yourself into discipline, you have no time left over because you're so worried about dropping the ball in your personal life, your professional life, that you work that much harder. So just think about what you really need, and, you know, don't sacrifice your money on that just because you think, oh, well, I have a small child, so I'm not going to be able to do as much. Like, just don't have that mindset. Have the mindset that you're still doing just as much as everyone else. Your brain power doesn't go away because you had a child. So don't, I just want to share, I really truly feel like it's the biggest misstep I've made in all of my career was doing that. And I'm very proud to say I feel like I've recovered from that, from the position that I'm in, from the financial compensation that I receive now. But it took a very long time to recover from that.
Do we have time for one more question, or should we be? What? I can't see you.
Sorry. Yeah, we are a little low on time, but I mean, I think it's been great so far.
Let's take one more question.
All right, at the front.
Here in the front.
First, I just want to say, you ladies all rock, and I want to give you a high five. I've spent about 20 years in the technology, sorry, I'm sitting in front of you, in working in technology, which can oftentimes be a boys' club. How do you recommend to some of our younger colleagues how to deal with some of the comments that are made or stories that are told that are not necessarily part of sexual harassment training, but they're not necessarily appropriate? And when you get to the point in the career that I feel confident that I can ignore it, I can address it, but I see some of my younger colleagues not being able to do that. And what advice would you have for those?
I can take that one quickly. Sorry. My first advice is actually to you, not to the younger women, and that's that if you do have the confidence, don't ignore it. I think that so often we see things and we hear things, and we're kind of like, okay, I've been working around this for such a long time, and it doesn't feel as bad. And you take a step back and you're like, yeah, you can't say that. And as simple as just saying, don't say that, or I don't appreciate you saying that, trying to get that person to think twice about saying it in the future, because otherwise you're going to get a young girl in there and she's going to walk into her computer one day and have a Post-it note with a drawing of a penis stuck on it, and she's going to be like, yeah, I'm out. And we can't have that exit rate. There's not enough entry to, suffice the exit that we're even having now. So if you do feel confident in speaking up, you've got to speak up. If you feel like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it and then they won't stop, then they'll stop saying it, they won't. So if you can, call it out. And that means that when the younger girls come through, they won't have as much of that environment, because it's not going to phase out quickly either. We're talking hundreds of years of dudes acting like dudes. Sorry guys, it's not everyone as well. I get it, and it's not always intentional, but you've just kind of think about what you're saying and the effect that it could have on someone. And if they tell you they're not comfortable with it, don't fight it. Don't be hostile towards it. It's not necessarily a personal attack. It's just like hey, I don't feel comfortable. Then just think about what you're saying.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just very briefly, don't laugh at it. And also the young women, and we don't have to get used to it. And we need to speak up. When something really it's not good, we have to even if it's a joke, it's important to speak up and to be brave, even if it's we're shy of addressing it. It's important, even with the ones that are starting and the ones in leadership, I think it's important to address it.
Yeah, I think leading by example, and a lot of times too, in the younger generation, we're numb to it. We don't recognize that was inappropriate. So I think, if you're able to pull someone aside and be like, you don't have to let them say that to you, or, are you okay? Did that offend you? And, just to make people aware that, you don't have to just listen to it and let it go in one ear and out the other, and really lead by example in that sense. And also just make sure people know that, it's okay to be uncomfortable with something that someone says, and there's not going to be retaliation for it. That's what HR departments are for. There needs to be open communication about, hey, I was kind of upset by that, so.
Well, unfortunately, we are at time. I think we could go on with this discussion probably for many hours, and I really wish we could do that, but yeah, really. I just want to, again, thank you so much to our panelists, and I've been inspired by, really, we've spent the last couple of hours now between the luncheon session and this panel really focusing in on this issue. We need to spend a lot more time talking about it, and I would encourage us all to keep the dialogue going amongst ourselves, with each other. I would love to get involved with our MVPs, so I hope you will reach out to me, and I will do the same. And thank you all so much for attending our panel today.